Hi, this is Ed Aaron, and this is my book, Time Sneak Emergence. This book is dedicated to my sister who always stays in the fight. The first chapter is entitled In View. Emily missed sunrises and sunsets more than rainbows. Sometimes, when the conditions were pristine, her 20/20 monochromatic vision allowed for a rainbow in the mist. But it was no more special than a mural. But sunsets and sunrises were daily events. And since she had always been a morning person, most every day presented an opportunity to enjoy one or the other. Now the horizon only offered mystery without the magic. Watching soccer hurt a little, not ocularly, but psychologically. The accident had robbed her of any chance to play in the World Cup, which had been her dream. Trying to snatch something whitish-gray hurtling through a silver collage amongst a group of players in similar uniforms was problematic. Despite extensive physical therapy, her right knee would never be the same. Fortunately, the University of British Columbia honored her scholarship, and Emily could continue studying. She surprised everyone when she decided not to pursue a sports-related occupation. Instead, she elected to revisit a childhood enchantment, drawing. Given her achromatic vision, she could capture life in contrast and invite the audience to see the world in black and white and shades of gray. People commended her for having a positive attitude and moving on, but Emily credited her younger brother for that. Despite Down syndrome, Mark always wore a smile on his face and saw the best in people and circumstances. There was no way Emily could or would dishonor his memory by wallowing in self-pity. As an approaching sports car erratically dodged a pothole and then narrowly missed hitting her, painful memories flooded back. And that, coupled with the knowledge she was about to become a lab rat, weakened her knees. Chin up now, Sprite, she told herself. Besides, $250 for a half a day of work was fantastic. So what if the job entailed allowing one of the world's largest pharmaceutical companies to fish her eyeballs and brain? Big deal, how bad could it be? She looked up toward her apartment on the 6th floor and was about to turn on her heel when a large black sedan pulled up. The driver smiled. Yes, she was Emily Morgan, and yes, he was an authorized driver for Curacare Pharmaceuticals. She climbed into the back seat. No one stabbed her with a needle, pushed a revolver into her ribs, or stuffed a rag in her mouth. No duct tape, no problem. She breathed deeply. So far, so good. After learning that she was technically a tetrachromat, Curacare had a car pick her up and bring her to the research facility. Her initial appointment had been delayed because the text message said they needed to change code and software of their InView platform to accommodate her extraordinary nature. Emily wasn't sure if that made her feel special or singled out as a freak. Upon arrival at the main entry, Emily looked up to see a tall, handsome, black-haired 30-something man walk up to the car, smiling a confident smile. As her door opened, the man was quick to extend a helping hand, and Emily quickly, too quickly for her own liking, grabbed his hand and popped up a tad closer to him than she would have liked, at least at that moment. Ms. Morgan, I'm John Fledge, Assistant Director of Resource and Procurement for Curacare. His eyes were as dark as coal, and Emily doubted there was a better-looking businessman in British Columbia. Good to meet you, Mr. Fledge. John is fine, and the honor is all mine. You're the first tetrachromat I've ever met. And you're the first businessman hottie I've met, Emily thought as she ran her fingers through her dark auburn hair, subsequently wishing she had not sent that involuntary signal. Honestly, Mr. Fledge, John, I didn't even know how special I was until I was 12, and then, of course, there was the accident. Yes, to go from being able to see 9 times as many colors as most of us to a world in gray hues is a shame and a tragedy. By the way, how is your knee? I heard you also aggravated a prior injury in the accident. Clearly, the Curacare executive had done his research. Oh, it's coming along. At least I can still juggle. He smiled politely at her dark humor. I watched some of your games at UBC. You were an excellent midfielder. My little sister played for SFU. Emily raised her eyebrows. Karen Fledge? Yes. Nice. Karen was a tireless runner. John passed her an envelope. We've expanded our budget. There's a check inside for $750. Plus, there is a potential for much more, depending on what happens today. This was a pleasant surprise. Thank you very much, Mr. Fledge. Emily had reverted to formality, so John Fledge replied with, "This way, Miss Morgan." She was happy to follow him. Yep, she could see drawing him from any angle. Light bathed the interior of the spacious concourse. Given the contrast and definition, she was sure there was very little color outside of the regularly spaced pictures on the wall. The tile floor was a checkerboard of black and white, and coupled with the rectilinear construct, the entire space was refreshing in its simplicity, particularly to an achromat. A feng shui fountain introduced a water element, which she knew from her time in the lower mainland was as much about attracting prosperity as it was about instilling harmony and insight. Still, she couldn't deny that the trickling waters and shimmering leaves of the surrounding plants gave her a feeling of wellness and wholeness. Having noticed her pause and look around, John raised his hand to stall a cadre of in-view professionals that had joined them in their walk toward the elevator. They made the fountain of alternating sequences of white porcelain and green nephrite jade, mine from right here in British Columbia. I wish I could see it with my old eyes, John. Well, we may have the technology to rectify that. Emily had conditioned herself not to expect too much anymore. Anyway, it is a pleasant area, sort of cathedral-esque. He laughed and made eye contact, his pale blue to her hazel. Perhaps he's only in his late 20s, Emily thought. Indeed. Unfortunately, as much as it would be nice to linger, we've a schedule to keep. Perhaps afterward, and time permitting, I could show you around? Oh, he was, what did they call it? Suave. Again he flashed the human equivalent of a feng shui smile, and it made Emily feel lightheaded. What was it about John Fledge? Overly familiar, supremely confident, too attractive? She almost shook her head to regain focus. Yes, we should get with the program. As to your kind invitation, I'll have to see how I feel after this shakes down. Understood. Shall we? John Fledge motioned toward the elevator. To her surprise, they traveled down, not up, 7 floors down, and Emily noticed the display showed at least 3 more floors lay below. As the facility stood 8 stories tall and had a footprint of 10 acres, it was an imposing edifice. The doors opened to an empty room, save for a strapping middle-aged man at a kiosk and expensive-looking security cameras where the walls met the ceiling. The security officer stepped to the side and revealed a holstered gun, which caused Emily trepidation. His light gray shirt bore the CuraCare logo and designation as subfloor security. Emily couldn't help but notice a shoulder patch with the curious depiction of a black eagle clutching a white egg. The ever-observant John Fledge softly cradled her forearm and guided her toward the kiosk. Not to worry, we simply must safeguard invaluable information and technology. So, you only need to confirm the information on the screen and submit to a retinal scan to establish your security tag, which I will give you after the first session.